and welcome back to Reading the Revolution. My name is Marielis, and today we are reading or continuing to read Neocolonialism by Kwame Nkrumah. And we have changed a little tiny bit the way that we do the stream because we want to make sure that we are not spending all of our time on basically summarizing what we have read up to this point. And I had my brother on the stream yesterday, and he was just like, breathe, girl, calm down. But like I was trying to rush through it because it was so much. I knew that there was so much, and it still took me forever. So apologies on that. And why can't I see the chat? Come on, chat. Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and show the notes and see if chat is showing up. I see you there, but I don't see you here where you're supposed to be. All right. There's no way that I'm gonna be able to fix that now. So we're just gonna have to roll with it. For this time, I do see you. I just want you to know whenever I look in this direction, I see you. I see you, Big Bunny. Thank you for coming back. But unfortunately, I don't know how to get it back there. I don't know what happened. Okay, so as you see here in my notes, I am just putting in purple everything that we're going to review just to kind of give the story to up to the point where we are now. And then we go into it in detail, basically just what we covered last time so that we can get some reading done and we can eventually finish this book. All right, so our book is Neocolonialism. Our author, Kwame Nkrumah. And one of the things that he was influential in the independence of the Gold Coast, which is now known as Ghana, and he was the first president. In the intro, we learned a little bit about what neocolonialism is. We learned that it penetrates society or the society of the territory countries financially through agreements, implanted politicians, and military pretenses, security of resources, basically. We learned that we're going to be going through Africa as our example. And when we went into it after the book, we learned that Africa's production actually is exactly what Kwame was worried about. It hadn't grown in the 60 years since the book was published. They make very little resources they make up little for their own economy with whatever they have left. Basically, all their resources are for the colonial bodies, the colonial, the pre-colonial countries, or the countries that were their colonial mothers. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say. Okay, in chapter 3, or at least what I call chapter 3, we talk about the obstacles to their economic progress. And we talked about one of the main ones was that they were divided into a lot of small countries, and the division was something that was encouraged and purposely put that way so that they can more easily control or dominate. We took a little side road, and he told us what he believes the solution is, which is continental economic cooperation and political cooperation. And he gave us all the reasons that is a good solution. But then we jumped right back into what those obstacles are. And he mentioned monopoly capitalism is one of those big ones. And later on, we go into details of what that actually means, or how it actually penetrates, or exactly how it limits the growth of the African nations. And we learned, here, at least he gave us a little glimpse of what are the industries that it penetrates, but literally just think of a thing and it can be monopolized, or it has been monopolized, in Africa. And then another obstacles is, economic obstacles. When independence comes, the countries are typically in bad shape. Yeah, so basically they need financial assistance. They need assistance right in the beginning. So that is another obstacle that they have. Okay. I really want to fix this this chat thing. What? No, because then I would have to go into where I created the chat. So now that would be a little bit too much. Okay, then we went into imperialist finance. And we have the US and Germany coming in, and they are coming in late, because they're, they weren't so much part of the colonial bodies originally. And so they go in with their different plans. They start buying things. They start implanting, taking over, merging, creating patent agreements, selling arrangements, just syndicates and cartels and all the things that basically bring us to the problems that we currently have now. Okay, and of course, these notes are available to you guys, so you can go to my Discord and you can, find them and read them in detail, because there's a lot of detail here, and I think a lot of it is really good. Then you have financial power started to go in the direction of Africa and Asia. Okay, so they started building their syndicates. They started buying up banking from Britain and France and, all these places. And then they started looking at Africa and Asia to control some shit there. Okay, so basically, those are some of the main problems, and monopolies. Yeah, so we kind of already went into that as one of the problems. The last bit is that as they're going in and doing all of this takeover, they start re-educating, making some cultural, waves, so that Africa could start seeing the way that they want to be is the Western way, and so they start entering the social domains and educational systems and all that stuff to influence the people. Okay, and then we have the, we start looking a little bit deeper at the monopoly capitalism and the American dollar. So we have a whole breakdown. I'm not going to go break down the American dollar and all of that stuff, but what we do want to just, highlight here is that this is a time when they start making big bucks. And I did a little bit of research and I looked to see how much worse things has gotten since the book was published. And you see here, rich countries have drained 152 trillion from global south since 1960s. So then it just compares it to the US GDP, which is 27 trillion a year at the time. So again, propaganda, letting the world know, its own people, Africa, everybody, that capitalism is the way to be. It is idealized as harmonious civilization. This is what you need. This is what you should cherish. So they're doing a little bit of soothing and massaging while they're doing their monopolies and their financial takeovers. Industry monopolies are created to manipulate prices and have mechanisms to deprive their enemies of resources. So it's not always for money. Sometimes it's just for power against their enemies. And that is where we left off. Wow, we did that in 45 minutes last time, and this time we did it in 10 minutes. But again, there's just a lot of juicy information there. You guys want to look into it on your own. Okay, so this is where we left off. So I'm going to read some of this, but literally it's only, it's not so much. This is basically what we went over last time, so that we can pick up. So monopolies have weaknesses too. And one of them is greed. because they basically penetrate all of the different levels of production. So from raw materials to finished goods to ancillary products and that sort of thing. So this is something that Africa needs to take advantage of, because they do threaten a lot. If you don't produce this, then we're going to just do some type of duplicate or substitution or whatever. And Africa needs to realize that that is actually not going to happen. When the book was published, the Commissions for Aid and Development, the OECD, estimated that with 3% growth in gross national product for developed countries, using less developed country resources will cost them 200 years for the undeveloped countries to catch up. And that's only if they grow at a 5% rate per year, which is, it's impossible. It's not going to happen. They barely have anything left over after basically, Firestone took 160 million in 1 quarter of rubber and left Liberia with 8 million, which is, you're comparing a company to a country in this and in a major resource. So they barely have enough left over to do the bare minimum for their countries. And a lot of them, this is the reason, at least at the time, this is the reason why they need those assistance and they need to continue to borrow. International institutions like the World Bank are propped up by national banks. So they're buddy-buddy. So World Bank and a lot of these national banks are basically have offices in the same building. They work together, so there's no, defense. There's no middleman or impartial party that they can ask for help in these predatory financial agreements. Global North nations wait for discontent or disorder in Global South countries to lay claims to raw materials. So we already know that wait is a very interesting word that I used here because it was with the examples that he put in. But we already know that sometimes it's not even so much about waiting, right? Sometimes they help or instigate. Then we entered chapter 6, where we were talking a little bit more about the media and how you have to look a little bit deeper to know what the truth is. And so he gave us some examples of news stories. So here you have a Morgan Grenfell participates in new French bank. So that's the headline. And so it seems like good news, I guess, for the country. But that for the French, probably, or also for the British, this guy is now going into this bank. Okay, whatever, like basically nothing. But when you break it down, Morgan Grenfell and Company is 1/3 owned by JP Morgan Company. The new French bank is 70% owned by Morgan Guaranty International and Finance Corporation, which is a subsidiary of another Morgan. Title I forgot, I didn't write it down, but another Morgan company. Now Morgan Grenfell owns 15%, as told in the story. The other 15% is owned by 2 Dutch banks with close association with the Morgan Group. Oh yes, Morgan Group. Morgan Guaranty International Finance Corporation is owned by the Morgan Group. And then both Dutch banks were then bought by the Morgan Guaranty International Banking Corporation. So is it really a discovery? This is just something that was eventually going to happen. It's basically the same company, but then you have the Dutch banks, still operating under their own name. And so you never know who you're really doing business with. Kwame goes on to further explain more entanglement with brothers heading other companies that are entangled with these banks. So he goes into a lot of details. And I read through some of the details, but honestly, some of the times I started to get lost because it was just like a lot of, I would need, a whiteboard and red string to kind of like piece it all together. He mentioned other headlines. So another one was French African banking move. So French African banking move. So something is happening. And then the main line was the arrangement will result in a substantial increase in volume of deposits held by Société Générale. This is a French bank. So now for the French bank and the people in France, it's good news because now they have more security and that sort of thing. But then if you look just a little bit deeper, you know that Société Générale is a French national bank. So it's owned by the country, and it owns, now with this little move, it owns Banque Commerciale Africaine in Senegal, in Ivory Coast, which at the time is called Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and Congo Republic. So basically, this move means that the French bank owns 4 country national banks in Africa. So that is what it looks like for the Africans. Kwame goes into intensive entanglement, starting with the sugar companies, and then Harold Charles Drayton. He really did obsess over this guy for some pages, even where we left off. And then I decided not to start. We're not going to read some of that stuff because it's just like, again, you need a whiteboard, you need some red strings. It's so much entanglement. But he was trying to make a point. So it was very, very difficult to follow. If I have time on Sunday, I will try to recreate something like that to see if we can visualize this entanglement. Okay, and then here I just kind of did a little bit of research. This is depressing, of course. During the time of the book publishing, the banking monopoly of foreign purchases were beginning. And Kwame was warning us about it. In 1995, foreign banks owned 35% of African banking. In 2019, 65%. So how much do they actually own now? You know what I mean? I don't know. Ethiopia is the only country that kept their banks national, but they have opened it last year. So I wonder what that means for them. And that's it. So we're caught up, and we did it in 18 minutes. Woohoo! Yes, we did. We raced through it. But yes, the notes are there, so you guys can go in and check those out. So now we can go straight into the book, and I still have my voice. I didn't speed through it. I was rushing last time because I was so nervous we're not going to get to do any reading. So yeah, we get to do some reading. Okay. Oh, this is the wrong one. Sorry. Okay. So we're just picking up right after the Drayton entanglement stuff. And then we're going to soon finish this, but this is where he starts wrapping it up. Okay. We may appear to have gone at some length into the intricacies of the financial and economic interests being some innocent-looking headlines. Yet these are, in fact, the merest directional indications of today's trend of ever-tightening links between a short list of incredibly powerful groups that dominate our lives on a global scale. The taking their detailed significance farther is the main purpose of this book. Nevertheless, even this brief breakdown provides illuminating evidence of the serpentine interlocking of financial monopoly today. What we observe above all is the constant penetration of a few banking and financial institutions into large industrial and commercial undertakings, creating a chain of links that brings them into a connective relationship, making for domination in both national and international economy. The influence exercised by this domination is carried into politics and international affairs, so that the interests of the overriding monopoly groups govern national policies. The representatives are placed in key positions in government, army, navy, and air force, in the diplomatic service, in policy-making bodies, and in international organizations, and institutions through which the chosen policies are filtered onto the world scale. Hello, I am doing very well. Thank you for joining us, Celia Just. Yeah, so basically we're reading Neocolonialism, and you are just in time because we're wrapping up some crazy banking interests, and he is letting us know what we should have learned from all of this. And we stop every now and then and do some discussion, but definitely whenever you have a question or whatever, comment, just pop it in there. Another note, I normally have the chat in front of me up in the screen, but for some reason it's not working and I don't really have the patience to do it on air. So I'll fix it for tomorrow's stream. All right. This process had already reached a high enough pitch before the outbreak of the First World War to call forth a number of important studies of its growth and potentialities. Two of these studies, Imperialism by the English liberal J.A. Hobson, published in 1902, and Finance Capital by the Austrian Marxist Rolf Hilferding, published in 1910, were used by Lenin as the main basis of his study of imperialism, which he describes as the highest stage of capitalism. He really wants us to know this. He has mentioned this maybe 4 times so far, and we're only in like the first third of the book. So he really wants us to know that capitalism is the evil of imperialism. Because we always think of the worst part of imperialism is them going to the land and basically claiming it. But apparently it's capitalism. All right. Well, I mean, it is doing some crazy ass harm. It can, at the stage at which competition transforms into monopoly, the so-called combination of production, that is to say, the grouping in a single enterprise of different branches of industry and monopoly itself, became dominated by banking and finance capital. Lenin's study was written in 1916. Since then, the domination of financial monopoly has speeded up tremendously. Really? Because it fucking really sped up at this point in, 60 years after this book was published. How is it to the point that Africa has not grown a fucking centimeter in production or wealth or anything? Anyways. How is it possible that capitalism, rooted in free enterprise and competition, has arrived at a stage where competition is being eroded to the point where pyramidal monopolies exercise dictatorial rights? The possibility lay in the very fact of free enterprise itself. The spur of competition led to invention on several planes. New machinery was devised to increase output and profit. Factories grew larger. Small units became unprofitable and were either driven out or swallowed up by bigger ones. We can see a small version of this when we think of Walmart and stuff like that, right? Where it just comes in and eats up all of the, homegrown stores. Rail communication improved distribution, and better ocean transport stimulated overseas trade and the bringing in of foreign raw materials. The joint stock company that encouraged the growth of rail and ocean transport served as forcing instruments for banking and insurance growth. New company laws assisted its extension to industrial and commercial enterprises, in which the individual investor risks was lessened by the limitation upon his liability. Competition moved on to another level. Companies that possessed large capital or were able to call upon it on their own security were able to wield an unequal influence against weaker ones. Yes, this is what happens with our government and our democracy. With these people paying our politicians. Anyways, we get it. Profits became hinged to the elimination of competition, the enormous expansion of industry, and the end of last century and the beginning of the present was accompanied by a rapid concentration into even larger enterprises. Yep. Combination of production was established as a cardinal feature of capitalism. Firms that had begun by concentrating upon one function of an industry spread into a group enterprise that represented the consecutive stages of raw material processing or were ancillary to one another. Trading houses extended their activities into distribution and then into actual production of finished goods from primary materials produced from plantations and mines they acquired in overseas territories. Hilferding, in his classic work on subject finance capital, explains the reasons behind his process. What are those reasons, Hilferding? Combination levels out the fluctuations of trade and therefore assures to the combined enterprise a more stable rate of profit. Secondly, combination has the effect of eliminating trade. Thirdly, it has the effect of rendering possible technical improvements and consequently the acquisition of super profits over and above those obtained by the pure non-combined enterprises. Fourthly, it strengthens the positions of the combined enterprises compared with that of the pure enterprises, strengthens them in the competitive struggle in periods of serious depression when the fall in prices of raw material does not keep pace with the fall in prices of manufactured goods. You know what they don't mention here is what actually is affected by these price increases or this price fixing, which is basically inflation, right? Which is the lives of every person in the world. But we all know that to be a billionaire, to be a millionaire, to be a monopoly, to be this great thing, you have to do some shady ass things. So why am I arguing this point? Hello. As monopoly of industry and commerce extended, the reliance upon banking capital also increased. New methods of production, the division of factories and businesses into departments, research into the possibilities of new materials and fresh ways of employing both old and new ones, all these while they eventually reinforced monopoly and enlarged profits, called for capital sums that only the banks and their associates in the insurance world were able to provide. Thus, side by side with the process of amalgamation of industrial enterprises went to the concentration of banks and their penetration into large industrial and commercial enterprises to whose capital they heavily contributed. So basically now we have the monopolies and the industry kind of like working together. Like, we're going to blow up our growth. We're going to just go into all of these things, but we can't really do it without you. So you're on our side. You give us the money, we do the thing. You guys keep, profiting. We keep profiting. Everybody's making money. We're all good. From middlemen originally performing the role of a simple money lenders, the banks grew into powerful monopolies themselves. Yeah, having at their command almost the whole means of production and of the source of raw materials of the given country and in a number of countries. This transformation of numerous humble middlemen into a handful of monopolies represents one of the fundamental processes in the growth of capitalism into capitalism imperialism, which is Lenin's thing. Imperialism, Lenin. We need to also, I think that once we're getting close to finishing this book, we need to kind of vote on what the next book is going to be. I have some ideas, but I want to see what your ideas are. All right. Union was established between the industrialist and the banker, in which the latter dominated. In the USA, for instance, the United States Steel Corporation, which was an amalgamation of several giant steel firms controlling half of the steel production of the country, was controlled by J.P. Morgan's banking interest because of the large investment they had in the industry. Before the end of the first decade of the present century, the Intervolk intervolutions of industry and banking had already taken place to a high degree. In Germany, for instance, 6 of the biggest banks were represented by their directors in a total of some 750 companies engaged in the most diverse branches of industry: insurance, transport, heavy industry, shipping, restaurants, theaters, art, publishing, etc. Conversely, there sat on the boards of these 6 banks in 1910 51 of the biggest industrialists, including Krupp, iron and steel magnate, armaments manufacturer, and director of the powerful Hamburg American shipping line. Yeah, okay, so this is what he's talking about. They basically just kind of penetrate all the companies are basically in the banking and vice versa. Today, this process has gone very much deeper, probably not deeper than it is today, and is spreading its roots more embracingly every day. The 6 German banks, including the 4 giants, the Deutsche Bank, Dresdner Bank, Diskonto, Gasselskaff, Kammerbank, all of which have grown even more powerful. Allied with them today, as in 1910, are the big German industrial trusts and cartels: Krupp, AEG, Bayer, Badisch, Anilin, and Soda Fabrik. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these names. You guys see them. Components into which the great IG Farben was broken by the Allies of the end of the Second World War. The explosives and armaments manufacturers connected with the massive ICI and its continental affiliate Savoy, for example, the Deutsche Bank is now Germany's leading bank and is placed as 11th among the foremost in the world. I wonder what it is today. In 1870, the Deutsche Bank had a capital of 15 million marks, which it had been able to increase to 200 million in 1908. In 1962, it disposed of funds amounting to 1.1 billion of old French francs. I do not have books and media links to share, but no idea where to put them in a Discord. Oh, just put them in general. I think you can put them in, or in discuss. Don't I have like a discussion one in the Discord? Let's see. Discord. I have announcement, but okay. Yeah, to put them in general. Let's just talk from there. Okay. Okay, let me just take a sip of my tea. The rule of financial oligarchy is maintained through the principal device of the holding company, often established with a purely nominal capital but controlling direct and indirect subsidiaries and affiliates utilizing vastly superior finances. Assuming that a 50% holding of the capital is sufficient to control a company, something it can be and is considerably less. It is possible with an investment, say 100,000 euros, to control tens of millions in subsidiary and interlock enterprises. I'll be honest, I don't quite understand that, but that's only because I don't know math. But I do know math. I'm just not good at it. But if you understood it, okay. I do read over all of this stuff a second time when I do my notes. So a lot of times I get more out of it the second time I read. And you guys get a lot of it when you guys read the notes. So definitely go into my profile and click on the Discord link so you can get to the notes. I put them in there after each stream. Okay. Concentrated in the hands of a few, finance capital exercises a virtual monopoly, by reason of which it exacts enormous and ever-increasing profits from company flotations, share underwritings, debentures holding, state loans, and bond issues. The douche bank, for instance, adopts a specific procedure for gaining control of enterprises and drawing in fresh profits. What is it? When participating in the launching of new ventures or extensions of already existing ones, it finds the whole of the required capital from its own and associate resources. So when participating in the launching of new ventures, of extensions of already existing ones, okay, it finds the whole of the required capital from its own and associated resources. Okay, when the formation is complete, the shares are unloaded at a premium. Okay. The bank holding just sufficient to give it a commanding voice in the direction of affairs. What? At the same time, it takes profit on the original capital. Oh my God. Oh my God. Did you guys understand that shit? What the fuck? So basically, it finds a bank that has a big share that they're basically bidding out. It buys the whole shit. It gets control the voice because it owns a bunch of it. It makes some changes, some moves it in a certain direction, Then at certain point, it sells it and it makes a bunch of profit, also sending the company into whatever direction it wanted to send it to. That's fucking evil. Also kind of genius. Wow. These motherfuckers are insane. Holy shit. It's okay. Math is my bitter ex and makes things difficult for me, so I get it. Yeah. Did you hear that shit, though? Like, that's insanity. All right. Let's go back to reading. This is insanity. Okay. Flotation of foreign loans provides one of the highest yielding fields of monopolist profits. Usually, a borrowing country is lucky if it gets more than 9/10 of the loan sum. Frequently, it is less, particularly if it is a developing country. Liberia's loans are a revealing and classical example of how monopoly finance operates in conjunction with governments to increase its profit. Okay. In Liberia, in 1904, President Arthur Barclay reported that the English 7% loan of 1871, originally 100,000, of which only 27,000 actually reached the Liberian treasury because of certain official defalcations, was the largest item of the country's indebtedness and would require 3 years' revenue to cover it. A desperate Liberian government succeeded in arranging an international loan of 1.7 million. This is, or 1,700,000. This was subscribed by British, French, Dutch, and German banking house associated with the United States financial institution of J.P. Morgan, the National City Bank, First National Bank of New York, and Kuhn, Loeb and Company. In this instance, the most arbitrary means were used in applying and securing repayment of the loan. An American receiver general was appointed by the United States and sub-receivers by Britain, France, and Germany. An arrangement with continued until America took over full control of Liberia's finance during the First World War. Little actual cash went to Liberian government, but fancy profits went to the banks and loan issue houses. Bonds to the value of 715,000 were delivered in London, 225 in Germany, 460,000 in Amsterdam, 158,000 in New York to creditors of Liberia in payment of their outstanding claims. It required reparations money from the sale of German properties in Liberia to liquidate subsequent debt incurred with then British Bank of West Africa to try to meet claims on this loan. Okay, so this loan made a lot of people money. It was only after a new loan was negotiated with the Firestone Corporation of America in 1926 that the Liberian government was able to use $1,180,669 to pay off the principal and accumulated interest on the 1912 loan. The loan offered by Firestone was in the region of $5 million at an interest rate of 7%, but by 1945, still only half of this amount had been subscribed. Firestone stipulations included the abolition of the Office of Receiver of Customs and its replacement by the financial advisor. It was under pressure of these debts that Liberia was obliged to cede large concessions for rubber planting to Firestone and later to the Goodrich Rubber Company. Okay, so this is a nice way of them taking over the industries as well. Opening your company to Western stock markets is the worst thing you can do as an individual and as a country. We need our own that can be influenced by the West, that can't be influenced by the West, yeah. We sure do. But how, right? We need to first pay some of these stuff off. I mean, I imagine you have to pay this stuff off. But yeah, see, when you can't pay it off, they lend you the money and then they just take over your well, in this case, the rubber. Yeah, okay. One of the principal functions of finance capital is the issue of securities on which the discount rates are ridiculously high. It is also an important method of consolidating financial oligarchy. In boom periods, the profits are immense. During periods of depression, the banks acquire holding by buying up small or failing businesses or engaging in their reorganization at a profit. Money is made by the banks and the sphere of control is extended. Financial assistance to land speculators is extended. Finance assistance to land speculators is also a means of entrenching control and inflating profits in times of industrial expansion. Ground rent monopoly merges with communication monopoly since an important factor governing rise in land prices is good means of communication with town centers. In his book, Monopoly, a study of British monopoly capitalism published in 1955 by Lawrence and Wishart, Sam Aronovich, has shown how the financial resources of Britain have become concentrated in the hands of a small number of big banks and financial institutions. Between them, the big five banks exercise immense power. In 1951, their 147 directors held 1,008 directorships, of which 299, just under a third, were in other financial institutions. That's crazy. So basically, their directors have positions in other institutions, and 147 directors held 1,008 positions, basically, in other institutions, some of them being basically in the same industry as the one where you work. So this is just influence. This is what he was talking about. Of these 299,085, of these 299, 85 were in other banks and discount companies. 117 were in insurance companies and 97 in investment trusts and finance companies. Basically, to me, all of these companies are the same thing. It's just finance to me. That's how I see it. Talk about centralization, wrote Karl Marx in Capital. Yeah, so maybe we can read Karl Marx about capitalism. I forget the name of the book. Not capitalism, about communism, the Communist Manifesto, maybe. But anyways, you tell me what you think as well. We all should vote. If it's just two of us, then we both vote. You vote yours, and now maybe we can do like a competition of something to find out who wins. But of course, maybe I'll invite other people so that they can go in there and vote as well. And you can do the same. All right, the credit system, which has its center in the so-called national banks and the great money lenders and users about them, is an enormous centralization, and gives to this class a parasites of fabulous power. This class of parasites gives to this class of parasites, this man and his parasites, Jesus. But I see, you're getting your point across, Kwame. I get you. Get it. We would be friends. Okay, class of parasites of fabulous power to interfere with actual production in a most dangerous manner, and this gang knows nothing about producing and has nothing to do with it. Who was saying this? I think this was Karl Marx, actually. This is in quotations, so this is not Kwame. This is Karl Marx. All right. If it's just two of us, then we can join. We can flip a coin. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can get to both of the books, actually. It doesn't matter. Okay. Hegemony of the money institutions over industry is assured by the vast reserves built up out of the various ways by which capital is advanced to industry at high profit and drawn from it through holding companies and interlocking directorates. This process emphasizes the separation of finance capital from industrial capital. When this separation has attained major proportions and the domination of finance capital has become supreme, the stage of imperialism has been reached. This stage can be said to have been brought to maturity at the turn of a century. Yeah, so if it was maturity back in the 1960s, then it is an old man right now, just like our president. Well, literally, I can be talking about any president. No, definitely ours. The American president is probably the oldest. Is he the oldest president of any country right now? I'll have to look it up because that is neither here nor there. This is not important at all. It's just where my mind went. All right. From free competition, the fundamental characteristics of its early stages, capitalism at its highest stage has polarized into monopoly, expressed in syndicates, trusts, and cartels, with which the capital of a small number of banks has merged. The trusts and cartels have assumed an international character and divided up the world among themselves. Monopoly extends to the control of raw materials and markets, for the possession of which highly developed capitalism engages in an even more intense struggle. Monopoly extends to the control of raw materials and markets, for the possessions of which highly developed capitalism engages in an even more intense struggle. Okay. I mean, I'm okay with them having some struggles. At its imperialist stage, finance capital's primary need is to find spheres of overseas investment which will return profits at a greater rate than can be obtained at home. The export of capital, therefore, becomes the domino of imperialism, which turns the export of commodities and leads to the capture of colonies as the means of assuring monopolist control. Upon this economic process is built the political ideology and non-economic superstructure that infuses the battle for colonial conquest. Hilferding expressed this ideology in a single, concise sentence. Finance capital does not want liberty. It wants domination. Possession of colonies gives a guarantee to the financial oligarchy of the owning country of the monopoly of actual and potential sources of raw materials and outlets for manufactured goods. I'm going to read it one more time. Possession of colonies gives a guarantee to the financial oligarchy of the owning country of the monopoly of actual and potential sources of raw materials and outlets for manufactured goods. Okay, wonderful. Good news. Monopolies are winning. All right, let's take a break from the reading and watch a video. All right, these videos I actually took probably a couple of days ago, so I don't really remember what they are, but we shall see together. Okay, what does this guy have to say?
Supporters of capitalism do not understand.
Let's refresh and see what happened.
Supporters of capitalism do not understand or comprehend the scale of suffering that goes into their convenience. If your understanding of capitalism...
I don't think they don't understand. You're giving them a lot of credit.
...begins and ends at your own convenience, then you fundamentally do not understand this system, and you do not understand the world you live in. If capitalism brings wealth and prosperity to everyone, then why, in your mind, is the global south so poor? Do you really believe half the world doesn't know how to work hard? Do you really believe that Africans that have been farming their land for 20,000 years need Europeans to come and show them how to do it? Capitalism can't even solve poverty and homelessness in our rich first world societies, but you think it will magically lift billions of people out of poverty in the global south? And when do you think this will happen exactly? Is there any plan or time frame or even loose strategy capitalism has shown you for how it plans to reduce global inequality and poverty? You can't provide answers to these questions because these answers don't exist under capitalism. Because capitalism's only goal is to make rich people richer, and the rest of us have to be pushed into poverty to pay for it. From its creation during colonialism, capitalism has always been about exploitation and extraction to make rich people richer. And you can only say that capitalism lifted millions of people out of poverty if you completely ignore the fact capitalism sent billions of people into poverty. You can only gloat about your privilege and convenience if you turn a blind eye and completely ignore the rivers of blood that power the entire logistical network. You can only gloat about capitalism's accomplishments if you ignore the rivers of industrial waste and oceans choking to death on plastic rubbish. You can only talk about the freedom of capitalism if you ignore the endless violence, wars, genocide, and extreme poverty forced onto billions of people to pay the upkeep of billionaires. And you need to understand that capitalism is a self-defeating system that plans to take us all down rather than let rich people lose even 1 cent of their money. So stop fighting for capitalism, because it will never fight for you. Your enemies aren't immigrants and other workers around the world. It's the billionaires who insist that they own everything in the world and leave us to survive on crumbs, or they go on destroying a planet they never intend to fix. You are in a class war, whether you like it or not, and it's time to join the right side and learn what needs to be done. Anyway, something to think about.
Yes, completely agree. I don't understand people that, yeah, people will defend capitalism even if they pay taxes, but know that the companies, the billionaire companies don't, that the billionaire owners don't. They might not know some of the things that we're learning in this book, but I'm sure that they know a lot of the things that has been put out there. They know that they're not rich, but capitalism does have a propaganda behind it, You can be rich too. All you have to do is work really hard and you'll get there. And you don't want to pay a lot of taxes when you become super rich, do you? You don't want whatever. I don't even know how to continue that. Let's watch one more. Military debt collection. I don't know what this is about. Let's see. And then we'll get back to the reading.
Think of militaries as self-defense forces.
Okay.
As self-defense forces. But today I'm going to tell you a different way of thinking about them. As debt collection services. You give someone a debt within a country, say from a bank to an individual, there is a legal system to enforce collection if those debt repayments are not made. And that legal system is enforced with implied violence via a police force. In the international system, there isn't really a legal system or a unified police force. The United States and its organizations like the UN or the World Bank or the IMF and the World Trade Organization kind of played this role over the last multiple decades, but that is quickly breaking down now. And so militaries are debt collection services. They always have been. In the book Super Imperialism by Michael Hudson, he covers how World War II was more or less caused by the Allies figuring out how to pay their debts to the United States for World War I. To take it a step further, David Graeber's Debt, the First 5,000 Years, writes about how all of human civilization is because of debt. Writing? It's so people can figure out who owes debts to who in a larger society. Courts, countries, etc. Everything is because of debt. When countries have overwhelming military superiority over other countries, they can write contracts that are unfair, and the other country has no way of defending themselves through a legal system or a military in order to nullify that contract. The reason European countries are wealthy is because Western Europe traveled the world, had a superior military, and enforced extremely unfair contracts on other countries. For example, the Opium Wars in China, which caused mass transfers, like civilizational level transfers of wealth from Asia to Europe. And because these societies have no strong militaries, they can't say, hey, that was unfair. They can't enforce that opinion. And if they try, the European powers would say, oh, this is a cause for war, and they would enforce even worse conditions on those societies. The fundamental difference between your domestic system within your country and the international system is that in the domestic system, a contract made under coercion is null and void. In the international system, the entire world we live in was built on contracts made under coercion. Even then, the global south played by the rules and through devaluing its own labor and its own resources, clawed back shares of this wealth. And just when they were getting to be powerful again, the United States wants to tear it all up and destroy the international system in order to maintain its place. The message is clear if you're in the global south. The only way for your country to become wealthy is not through your hard work, it's through making a militarily dominant play to get your resources back.
I agree.
That's it. So yeah, that was your message on militaries as debt collection services. People think of militaries.
Yeah, I think that I mentioned that yesterday when we were going through our reading. I mentioned it in passing. Sometimes I am afraid of some of my opinions because they're coming partly from, my intuition and partly from what I learn. And I feel like I don't have enough of this type of education to have these strong opinions. And I just wonder if maybe some of my opinions are a bit more destructive, but based on the things that we are reading, I mean, the powerful, the ones that win the wars do get the plunder. The after World War II, all of these countries needed assistance, the European countries, and America went in and started buying all of their banks, buying all of their, all of their investments. And then they turned to Africa and Asia, and then they started, getting some of the pieces of the pie from there as well. And then, infiltrating themselves even deeper into it, extracting more, producing more, and changing the rules and that sort of thing. But all of that happened after war, so yeah, I mean, and then you think about all of these different contracts, these terrible contracts that were predatory, that these countries are still under, and you think about how do you get out of those because they're unfair, right? So why should you continue to oblige to a contract that is never for you. It was always against you. Like, you could just, tear it up, and just be like, fuck you. But you need guns to be able to do that. Anyways. Now we're here to share our opinions. No need to hold back. Yeah, that's true. That is true. All right. Let's get back to the book. Okay, chapter 7. The primary resources and foreign interest. Primary resources and foreign interest. I think we've already had the introduction of this, but let's get into it. America and European companies connected with the world's most powerful banking and financial institutions are, with the consent of African governments, entertaining upon major projects designed to exploit new resources of primary goods. Excuse me. In some cases, these are allied to long-term ventures for the establishment of certain essential industries. In the main, however, they are confining themselves to the production of materials in their basic or secondary stages with the object of transforming them in the mills and plants owned and run by the exploiting companies in the metropolitan lands. I'm going to read that a little again because I didn't get it. Okay, in the main, however, they are confining themselves to the production of materials in their basic or secondary stages, with the object of transforming them in the mills and plants owned and run by the exploiting companies in the metropolitan lands. Okay, they're just saying they're taking the shit and shipping it to their countries and producing them there. Okay. Africa has failed to make much headway on the road to purposeful industrial development because her natural resources have not been employed for that end, but have been used for the greater development of the Western world. This has been a continuing process that has gained tremendous momentum in recent years, following the invention and introduction of new processes and techniques that have quickened the output of both the ferrous and non-ferrous metal industries of Europe and America in order to keep pace with the ever-increasing demand for finished goods. Military preparations and nuclear expansions have had a considerable impact upon this demand. World output of crude steel almost doubled itself in the decade between 1950 and 1960, from 190 million tons to 340 million tons. Even the regression of 1958, which lasted through the following years, failed to halt the progress, which went on in lesser degree in both Eastern and Western countries. The regression in 1958. Okay, so I guess there was a regression in that year. I don't know. Okay, the general forecast is that this tempo of production will be maintained. As it comes from Western sources, it makes little allowance for expansion of African use of primary goods. Okay, primary products. And envisages to continuance of the present flow of between development sources, countries, and highly industrialized users. Nor does it take into account the likelihood of the repressive tendency in Western economies that can certainly affect the demand for raw materials. A publication of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe in 1959 estimated that the world production of steel between 1972 and 1975 will be in the region of 630 million tons. Actually, let me just go back a little tiny bit. Okay. All right. Never mind. Sorry. I was just thinking if these numbers up there were 68 or whatever. Anyways, I was just, because how do I say? My brain had a glitch. That's really what it was. Okay, a publication of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe in 1959 estimated that the world production of steel between 1972 and 1975 will be in the region of 630 million tons. Before the last war most of the Western world's iron and steel output was based upon local raw materials. The post-war years, particularly since 1956, have seen an opposite trend, something like a quarter of raw materials, 90 million tons out of 400 million, used in the world's metallurgical industries. That's what it was. Metallurgical. There you go. Okay. Is that what you were trying to get me to notice when I was doing the pronunciation last time? Okay. Metallurgical industries have been imported. Okay. So they were doing their own stuff, and then now they were doing their own stuff, and now in this time period, they're importing a third. I think it's increased a great deal since then, but I'll probably put that on my notes. I don't know. I couldn't see it. You know what it was? It's the two L's. The two L's. Yeah, I think you're here because the notes are the chat is here, but the two L's is the thing that gets me confused, or that got me confused. Now I got it. All right. The countries mainly importing these raw materials are the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. The Soviet Union and the developing countries have at their disposal sufficient quantities of domestic raw materials. At the present time, 3 large areas of primary resources are being exploited for the benefit of the great producer countries. These are Africa, Canada, South America, in particular Chile and Peru, and lately Venezuela. Canada has become a province of American capital investment, which draws up high profits and exploits vast resources of raw products for conversion in American plants. South America and Africa, besides offering these advantages, provide cheap labor and local government assistance by way of duty exemption for imported machinery and equipment, as well as tax remission. All right. Surveys now being carried out in Africa are discovering more and more deposits of valuable raw materials. Western investigators regard them essentially as resources of exploitation for the commerce and industry of their world, ignoring completely the development of the countries in which they lie. Ignoring completely the development of countries in which they lie, which they still haven't paid any attention, except for those terrible commercials we used to see in the past. Apparently those don't work anymore because I haven't been seeing them. Africa has gotten some common sense and probably done something about that. And now we have social media and everything, but they just don't care. They never have. And it's so much worse now. So, but glad you noticed it, Kwame. Robert Saunon, in an article in Europe, France, Outremer of November 1961 surveys the possibilities of Africa as a provider of ferrous raw material for the industries of the greater metallurgical countries. He reminds his readers that these are sources of these primary materials in Europe, such as Sweden and Spain, and that for Japan, there are countries of Asia and Oceania that have this stuff as well. Oh, I still see this, the Starving Kids commercial. You'd still see them? Holy shit. I mean, the stuff that I'm seeing has more to do with like genocide and the things that we're causing. But maybe my algorithm has been fucked. And I don't really watch a lot of TV. So that's probably why I don't see them. But I didn't know that they still had them. I mean, they're still starving. Obviously, that's still happening. And we're reading and learning why that is. And it's not our fault. Why do we have to help Africa, us, that you know, you're taxing us to fucking kill people, but you can't stop extorting from Africa so that they can feed their own goddamn people. You have to lend them money so that they then have to be trapped in a lending fucking cycle, putting them in deeper into this shit. Like, we need to fucking talk about this stuff. This stuff needs to be out in the mainstream, because they can't keep getting away with this shit. They're the cause. They are the cause. The government, the Western government, are the cause for this shit. And all those capitalistic companies that are in cahoots with the government. So yeah, okay, all right. Back to it. He concludes that European participation is a favorable factor in starting off the exploitation of Africa's mineral resources, but that the new productive capacities in course of development should counsel prudence and a detailed examination of the selling possibilities. These mines are bound to start off in a situation of lively competition, which must have its effect upon price levels. They need, therefore, to be subjected to close preliminary examination before being embarked upon, and must depend upon agreement between the exploiting companies and the host state, which will give the former a just return and the latter a stable fiscal regimen for the functioning of the harmonized exploitation. The harmonized exploitation. I'm glad he doesn't take away the word exploitation from there. Like, we need to talk to the state and make sure that they agree with us, exploiting them in this way. In short, the governments of the new states are seen in the role of policemen for the banking and industrial consortia bent upon continuing the old imperialist patterns in Western Africa relationship. The stable fiscal regimen they will guarantee out of such exploitation will, according to Robert Sauno, be based on conditions of depressed price arising from acute competition. These countries need to nationalize all of their shit, cut up all of their fucking contracts, and just end the shit. Just end it. I mean, as much as possible, and then tax the shit out of the rest of them. They need to all just be in a room and just decide that. I guess the only problem with that is that they don't have the military, and you have to have the military for that to be able to have that type of grandstand. There has been a considerable increase in the production of primary materials in Africa since 1945 under the stimulus of post-war rebuilding needs throughout the world, and the exigencies of Cold War stockpiling and armaments requirements. Another driving factor has been the revolution in productive methods and management. The surge of colonial peoples towards independence must also be acknowledged as a forced contribution to the extension of raw materials production. Okay. The surge of colonial peoples. Okay, their independence, yeah. Okay, in some cases, the production of primary... Wait a second, what? The surge of colonial peoples towards independence must also be acknowledged as a force contributing to the extension of raw material production? How does that make sense? So if they get their independence and they're doing their thing, they obviously have to get money, ask for money or borrow money to get their people, whatever, but then production has to increase somehow, I guess because they need to pay back the loans? I don't know. All right, I didn't get it. In some cases, the production of primary materials since 1945 has multiplied several times, and in some cases has doubled. The scene in Guinea shows much change following the discovery of deposits of iron and bauxite. diamond mining has also made noticeable progress. The Ivory Coast in 1960 was producing diamonds at an annual level of about 200,000 carats, and operations have started in the manganese fields in the neighborhood of Grand Lahou. Calcium phosphate is being exploited in Senegal, and aluminum and oxidized sand provide some mining activity. The mining of iron ore is underway in Mauritania, where an Anglo-French consortium is planning to produce 4 million tons as a first stage, to be increased later to 6 million tons annually, and I wonder what it is now. Deposits are estimated at around 115 million tons of 63% iron grade. Finds of very rich phosphate deposits in Senegal have brought a French-Belgian financial and mining combination into the country to carry out their exploitation. You know, sometimes when we think about like how much of these raw materials these countries get from the territories or the African countries, sometimes I don't think, I separate it and I only think about the raw materials that they're getting for it, and I forget the banking system that is entrenched in all this. So they don't even actually have to benefit from the actual raw materials, because they're also benefiting from the banking system, the lending and the financing this industry, this extraction, just financing the extraction. They make money off of that, even if it's not even sold to them. But it is many of the times, which is insane. An estimated 40 million tons of raw phosphate are expected to allow a production of 13 million tons of rich phosphate through the extraction of 600,000 tons of concentrate annually for 20 years. To be honest with you, I don't know what these numbers mean really conceptually, but it would be nice to when I do my notes to see what the change is, and there we can kind of see, and maybe we can compare it to like how much, it's how much it started off as. Okay. Phosphates have also been found in Togo, which are to be exploited by a consortium association with the Banque de Paris et des Pays Bas, and established mining companies having connections with the Société Générale de Belgique. Manganese, uranium, oil, and iron ore finds in Gabon have brought in similar consortia for their exploitation. The Cameroon produces little from mining beyond some small amounts of gold, tin, and rutile, though there has been no effective change in Madagascar's position. There have been discoveries of uranium, monazite, zircon, chromium, and other minerals whose exploitation is being investigated. I mean, I swear to God, like it would be better to like not have these materials, because then you would be left alone, and then you can kind of figure this shit out. The more stuff they find, because they do their surveying, they like do their mining and shit. The more they find, the more fucking in a hole you become. But anyways, you can't wish that your land was not, rich, That's a stupid ass fucking wish. It gets me mad though. Iron and ore finds in Algeria are estimated at 100 million tons. And we have been hearing a good deal lately about the oil and gas resources of the Sahara Desert. Algeria fields are now producing at the rate of 450,000 barrels a day, about a third of those of Iran. I am going to look at some of these comparison to now, because this makes me very, very curious. And Libya has reached 150,000 barrels daily, with the anticipation of achieving 600,000 barrels of a day within the next 5 years. Algeria's sector of Sahara finds the minerals in Tindouf are expected to produce 50% of iron. And also they produce, Algeria fields are now producing, they produce a third of those in Iran, But we don't really hear too much about like Algeria today when it comes to oil. We hear about Nigeria, we hear about Venezuela, we hear about Russia, Iran. We know the U.S. has a bunch of oil. We know Norway, where I'm at right now, has a bunch of oil. But we don't hear mention of Algeria. At least I don't. And so I just wonder if it has grown. It was 1/3 back then. Then what is it now? And why are we not hearing about it? Who basically is benefiting from it? Whose oil is this? You know what I'm saying? Especially when we talk about all of the the Strait of Hormuz, 20% of the oil travels through there. I'm like, where are the rest of like the 80%? Like, why are we not talking about that? Like, educate us, media. Media, can you please educate us instead of just propagandize to us all the time? Can you like give us some real information? Yeah, whatever. Honestly, let me write that. Honestly, what are other countries going to do if we shut down everything? Even without the military, we shut down water and electricity, sabotage the infrastructure to the companies. The West have placed in our African nations, decline any help from them to fix things. They make no profits. We claim there is interference when we try to fix the issues, and they have no choice to pull out because they no longer make money. After they're gone, reclaim and now abandoned factories and businesses as ours. That is a good plan. That is a good plan. You know what? I say try it, because my way is not going to work. You know, to get like, yes, we Africa united, but then like Africa united and with military, like Africa still has to industrialize and get enough money, so military, like that can happen. So yeah, like fuck it all. Just shut it all down. Is interference, we don't know, guerrilla mines, whatever. And then, you know, see what happens. I'm afraid that what they'll just do, because they're so invested, is just like bring their own military and just fucking take over. That's what I'm afraid that would happen. But you never know. I say do it. I mean, you sound like you've thought about it. You probably have some, like, you know, you can probably close some of these holes, those doubt holes that I have, because you thought about it a little bit more. I'm like more militant, I think. But unfortunately, if you don't have the money, you can't be militant. So, yeah. You know what? No, I'm going back to your thought, because if the people don't work, who's going to do it? Exactly. You're right. Because even if they have the military come in and whatever, who's going to do it? Yes. Just go on motherfucking strike. Yes. I agree. Okay, cool. That's a good plan. I like it. Okay, so let's look at some of these figures and see if we understand them or get anything out of them. Okay, the following figures, taken from UN statistical yearbooks, illustrates the great rise in output of minerals in Africa in the post-war period. All right, post-war period, 1945 to 1959. We have Morocco phosphorates coal and zinc in tons. They have 1 million. Oh my God. They went from 1.6 million to 7.1 million, almost 0.2. Yeah, everything just, you know, we don't even have to say the numbers out loud. Coal went from 178,000 to 465,000. We look at Congo diamonds, from 5.4 million to 14. Jesus Christ. And you know the U.S. has a big hold on this. Oh my God. No wonder we're the richest country in the world. The U.S. I still call us we because I am American, so. All right, let's continue. Okay. The highest rate of increase is South Africa. The highest rate of increase is in South Africa, where a production of 624,108 what is that? Kilogram? Yeah. Of gold makes the republic the producer of half the world's supplies. An output of 2,838,000 carats of diamonds in 1959, about 40% of which were gemstones, put it third after the Congo and Ghana, whose output is almost entirely of industrial diamonds, though the value received because of its control of the industry and the number of gem diamonds is relatively greater than that of Ghana's. She also leads in the production of chromium ore and is second in the output of lead from SW Africa, Southwest. Even South Africa uranium production of 7,000 tons obtained largely from gold and copper slimes is way ahead of the Congo's 1.7 thousand tons. Okay, let's look at these numbers again. So we have South Africa. He's comparing South Africa to Congo, and Congo's diamond production increased tremendously, like almost 3 times. And South Africa just started producing and has way less, but it's making more money because it's developing them. Is that what they're saying? Entirely of industrial diamonds, though the value received because of its control of the industry and the number of gem diamonds is relatively greater than the Ghana's. Okay, wow, that's insane. If you produce, if you industrialize, you make money. If you don't, you're going to stay poor. Because raw materials doesn't make you money. Okay, mining of all kinds of South Africa has reached a stage of exploitation which can be compared to that of Canada, and which is now feverishly beginning to open up in Australia, where the same, are we talking about, South Africa. Okay, South Africa is developing. Okay, where the same companies in alliance with American and other associated interests are paramount. The close relationship borne out even in the names of mines, particularly in Canada, which frequently duplicate those also to be found in South Africa and Rhodesia. Okay. All right, let me just keep reading and see if I understand this better. Africa's possession of industrial raw material could, if used for her own development, place her among the most modernized continents of the world without resources to outside sources. Iron ore, mostly of high quality. Okay, maybe what is saying is that the actual raw materials puts her in comparison to these other countries. Is that what it's saying? The close relationship borne out even in the names of mines, particularly in Canada, which are frequently duplicated, those also found in South Africa and Rhodesia. All right, you let me know if you understand that a little bit more. If not, then I'll just put it in my notes once I read it another time. All right, Africa's possession of industrial raw materials could, if used for her own development, place her among the most modernized continents in the world without resources to outside sources. Iron ore, mostly of high quality, is to be found in gigantic quantities near to the coast where it can easily be shipped abroad. As for bauxite, Africa's estimated reserves are more than 2/5 those of the whole world. Wow. They are twice those of Australia, which are placed second. Guinea alone is estimated to contain deposits equal to those of the whole Australia. That is over 1,000 million tons. Ghana is said to have the reserves totaling 400 million tons. Sudan, Cameroon, Congo, and Malawi are other known sources of considerable deposits, and the investigation of probable resources is proceeding in Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Portuguese Guinea, and in other parts of Africa. Yeah, I mean, not surprising. We know among the base materials, not the actual numbers. I didn't know the actual numbers. Among the base materials essential for the production of iron and steel, manganese has a place of high importance. Besides being used for allowing with pig iron in the manufacture of special steel, it is used in the chemical industry for certain purposes under present-day processes, manganese is irreplaceable. It is in constant use of the rate of 18 to 20 kilogram to a ton of steel. The Soviet Union and China are particularly self-sufficient in the supply of this essential basic material. The other great world steel producers, the United States, Western Europe, and Japan, do not have appreciable quantities in their own territory. See, this is what I'm talking about. If you know they don't have it, fucking, extort them. You know what I'm saying? Do some contract changing. Rewrite some contracts. As soon as they end, make some new ones, make some adjustments, find some loopholes, get some lawyers up in there. They need it. They need it. Their principal sources of supply are Africa, India, and Brazil. Of these, Africa provides the greatest quantity. Angola, Bechuanaland, Congo, Ghana, Morocco, Rhodesia, Southwest Africa, and Egypt have been among the producing countries for some time. Others, like the Ivory Coast and Gabon, are now being added to the list. North Africa is the world's greatest producer of phosphates. Morocco alone exports 7 million tons out of some 9 million tons coming from North Africa. See, this is why this book was prohibited during that time. They didn't want the leaders, the rest of the leaders, they didn't want other people to know about this stuff. Because now shit has only gotten worse. If more people, if this book, this one, was taught in schools, in African schools back then, if they had their engineers and their lawyers and their scientists and their politicians know this stuff by heart, know these numbers and keep up to date and start to dig into this stuff, that it wouldn't have gotten as bad as it's gotten today. But they knew that this was going to be a problem because, I'm just like, my eyes are being opened by a lot of this information. And I'm just like, if I was there, I would fucking be like, in the streets. I would be in politicians' offices every day. I would be doing something if I was there and I had finished reading this book. Because, even today, honestly, I guess you can just teach it to them today because it's the same shit. They're not doing anything. Some of them are, but the people, look at how they're behaving in South Africa. It's just like they'll still the education infiltration, the social infiltration, the religious infiltration. It has fucking poisoned the minds of the African people, and now they're behaving like the West about immigration or whatever the fuck. So they need to be re-educated. They need to fucking start there. With all of our plans about having them stop working in the factories and just basically going on strike. Like who's gonna mine this shit? What are you gonna bring your people from the United States to mine it? Let's see. You have to pay them a whole lot of money for them to do it and have to protect them from us because they're gonna be also in danger because they're invading us. You need fucking visas to get into this country. You can't just get in here. But if you don't start by educating the people, then you're never going to have revolution. And that's what we're doing here. We're trying to educate ourselves. Anyways, all right. The USA comes next with an export of 4 million tons. New producing countries which have appeared since 1957 are China with some 600,000 tons in 1960. And North Vietnam with 500 tons. Senegal is the producer of aluminum phosphate, her output being about 90,000 tons a year. And Togo, is now appearing on the phosphate market. Okay, so he's giving us some numbers. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue to read a lot of these numbers. If most of this is just going to be numbers, I'm going to have to just skip some of that. Let's see. Recent mineral discoveries. There have been discoveries of higher quantities and qualities since 1960s. We're going to skip some of this. All right. The Niger Republic deposits are estimated at more than 100 million tons. Okay. We know. We don't know, but we know. Algeria has been an iron ore producer for some time. Exploitation was undertaken there in 1913 by the French enterprise known as La Société. I'm getting kind of fed up by these French words and country in general. The Launza operating at, Diabel, Oenza in the south of Constantine, close to the Tunisian border, formerly incorporated as a department of France. The company has built its own railway lines connecting its two producing centers to join with the other one. Its plans enable Société de Laonza to export iron principally to Great Britain. Yes, of course. Germany, Italy, Belgium, and the Low countries, and the U.S. Between the outset, this exploitation, and the end of 1960, a total of 46 million tons of mineral has been extracted. So much more has been extracted up until this point. So we're going to skip some of that. All right, actually, since I'm doing all this skipping and stuff, I'm thinking that maybe I need a break. So let's go into, let's watch a video. Let's see. Ignore me smiling over here watching you count because you're. Oh my God, it's so easy to get angry. I try not to. No, I don't try not to. I try to not get as angry, and I try to come back for a bit quickly, but sometimes I'm like in it. Yeah, this book is not one of those books that doesn't get you angry. I wonder if we're gonna read any books that doesn't make us angry. All right, let's watch some videos and see if they will not make us angry. I doubt it. Just her face. Look at her face. It's going to make us angry.
Division of the violence and imperialist brutality that America has committed and the capitalist international order.
What? All right, hold on. It's because these videos have been up for a while.
Division of the violence and imperialist brutality that America has committed and the capitalist international order that we uphold is entirely artificial and farcical. The blood on our hands was spilt in service of the liberalized capitalist international order that you so idolize. Our coups and our imperialist conquests are committed at the behest of the international corporate conglomerates that our governments serve. America is not and has never been the linchpin cinching together the democratic free world. We toppled Allende to install Pinochet in the 70s, provided financial backing to the fascist Argentinian juntas, supplied unconditional support to Yeltsin, chief architect of the modern Russian oligarchy, and today we bankroll the genocidal apartheid Israeli regime, playing defense in the UN for the anal gang rape of Palestinian prisoners with rusty metal holes. We have set a global historical precedent for draconian drug laws, upending entire economies with gang warfare driven by the American elite's unquenchable twin desires for coke and bloodshed. We have set back progress, combating the climate crisis that threatens the imminent annihilation of life on Earth by funneling untold billions into hydraulic fracking and deforestation of old-growth forests on federal lands. The incineration of the Amazon is in service for our appetite for beef. The Israeli state is a product of Palantir, and we sponsor the dissolution of democracy internationally through armed violent coups. We sponsor the dissolution of society through the insidious arm of neoliberal austerity exercised in our name through the IMF and World Bank. These problems are not a product of America per se, but they are an inevitable outcropping of our status as the concentrated seat of the powers of capital on the global stage. We are their principal agents and benefactors. Our interests
Are we less angry after watching that? It's good to be angry. Yeah, I guess it does get this shit done. Yeah, so I mean, at least she looks more angry than I am. Let me give her a like. All right. Let's get back to the book. I think we can get some more reading done before the end of our time. All right. Okay. The existence of iron ore in the Sahara was first indicated in the Gara Diabilet region, some 110 miles southeast of Tidalf in 1952. Difficulties of the situation and water supply are obstacles in the way of exploitation. Yes, water supply difficulties. Wow, those are obstacles. Kind of like the obstacles of data centers now, which is the fact that water supply is one of them as well. But we don't want to talk about the details, of course. What does it actually mean? Nevertheless, a committee composed of representatives of the iron and steel industries of France, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands is busily investigating the possibilities in conjunction with the French Bureau d'Investissements and Afrique. Liberia's iron ore resources are reputed to stand at 1,000 million tons in the Nimba range and 600 million tons in the deposits near the Sierra Leone border. The Nimba iron ore mine, which has been sunk and is being mined by a consortium known as LAMCO Joint Venture Enterprise. Members of the consortium being Liberian American Swedish Mineral Company and Bethlehem Steel Corporation, is estimated to have reserves of over 300 million tons of high-grade hematite ore with an average iron content of over 65%. Long-term contracts are in hand from German, French, Italian, and Belgian steelworks, while a considerable part of the output will go to the powerful United States Bethlehem Steel, which has a 25% participation in the venture, the other 75% being taken up by the LAMCO. LAMCO is said to be a company shared between the Liberian government and the foreign enterprise of the 50-50 basis. The non-government participant is Liberian Iron Ore Company, a consortium of American and Swedish financial and steel industries. So, they still, 25% is owned by America, but, LAMCO's 50-50 partnership thing it also has some American people here as well, and Yeah, okay. But yeah, so the people get half of 75%? Okay. And that's if we think that the people actually get that. Okay. Chief of these is the Swedish mining company, Grängesberg, which besides having an important stake in the LAMCO Nimba Mine Act as managing agent for the joint venture in which American capital predominates. Grängesberg's formerly holding 28th of the LAMCO syndicate, according to its annual report adopted at its annual general meeting held at Stockholm on 18th May 1962, increased its participation to 1528, given in a majority slice of the equity. Grängesberg owns iron ore mines in central Sweden, as well as power station, forest, and farm properties. It also built and controls the Frovi Ludvigs Järnverk Railway undertaken, and operates the Oxelösund Iron Works, turning out pig iron and heavy plates. In addition, it possesses and runs a fleet of ships which, at the end of 1961, comprised 33 vessels and had on order another 4 for delivery in 1962 and 1963. The subsidiary Tibolagate, whatever, Hemtites worked mines in North Africa, and others include an arms and chemical enterprise. That other company, Express Dynamite, the Swedish government took over holdings which Grängesberg exercised in Luossavaara, Kurunavaara, AB, LKAB, but out of the purchase price of, KR 925. A lot of these numbers, I just can't. I can't. We're just going to have to skip through some of this stuff. I get it, what you're saying, Nkrumah, but okay, now we're frozen. Hold on. There we are. Okay. Let's see. We're going to skip some of these numbers. We're going to skip this. All right. Let's see if we get some good information here. There's some numbers here, but we need to eventually wrap it up. Bethlehem Steel is a heavy investment sphere for Rockefeller's profits from Standard Oil, which has been pushing to displace British Dutch oil interests in the Far East. John D. Rockefeller III has made himself a specialist on the Far East with a preference for Japan, where he was a member of John Foster Dullah's peace treaty mission in 1951. He established the Japan Society, Inc., for cultural interchange. Persistent visits and pressures have boosted Standard Oil Company facilities in Japan, Indonesia, New Guinea, and India in oil production, refining the sales. The Rockefeller interest in Japan is reflected in the link with the Sumitomo Metallurgical Group, which has been cemented in the Bethlehem Copper Corporation Ltd. 1955 British Columbia registration property claims in the Highland Valley of British Columbia hold ore reserves of a bunch of tons, grade 1/20% copper, and a bunch of tons of almost 1% grade. Additional claims are held in the provinces, as well as the full subsidiary Highland Valley Smelting and Refining Company. That is a lot of information. Basically, you're just letting me know these people fucking own things on all different places, and sometimes the reason that they own it in a specific country is because they spent some time there and they like the culture, and they're just so fucking rich that they can just go ahead and just own some of that. But at the end of the day, they're not going to really change because of the culture. They're not going to really get in touch with themselves. They're going to just go back and, monopolize and terrorize some more. All right, let's see what else we're getting here. Total output is to go to Sumitomo. So we're back to this Rockefeller guy and his Japanese company, Metal Mining Company, Ltd. Group, which is responsible for bringing the property into production. It has bought 400,000 shares in Bethlehem and has options on further lots in connection with loan promises of $5 million and an agreement to contribute 1/2 of the funds required for expansion. Yeah, some more expansion. You never have enough, apparently. Sumitomo provides Bethlehem's vice president and 2 other directors, one of whom is from the prominent Tanaka family. Okay, so we got some Japanese interchanging, some big wealth connections. The first deliveries from the Nimba mine were made during May 1963, and production of 7,500,000 tons is planned for 1965. The Nimba iron ore streaks of Liberia stretch into Guinea, where the prospecting is taking place in the Nimba Simaju region, about 1,000 kilometers from Conakry, close to the Liberia-Ivory Coast borders. A West European banking group representing itself as the Consortium Européen pour le Développement des Ressources Naturelles de Afrique, Consarfrique, is undertaking investigations by contract with the Ghanaian government. The group comprises, let's see all these wonderful names. Banque de Indection, whatever, Paris, Deutsche Bank. So we're looking at, Netherlands, Germany maybe? I think it's, I don't know. Hambros Bank in London. Netherlands. Oh, there we got the Netherlands banks there in Amsterdam, Societe. We have a Italian. That's Brussels. We have another Brussels, and we have another Paris. All right, so we have a good combination of banks from all over Europe. The Banque de Indochine is closely associated with the Banque de Paris. Okay, all right, so they kind of know each other, but not really, because they're actually associates, according to this. This pays Bas and has links with the Société Générale de Belgique, which is in France. Its original sphere of operations has been largely closed by its exclusion from North Vietnam because of the socialist regime establishment there, while in South Vietnam, it has now become subordinate to American finance. The Banque de l'Indochine, which already had a foothold in Algeria, is turning more and more to Africa. All right. Where it is grouped in several consortia, usually round the interests connecting with the Société Générale de Belgique, the Banque de Paris et des Pays Bas, and the Dutch Bank. All leads with Morgan International Interest. The Banque de l'Indochine is represented on the board of La Nickel, which exploits a variety of minerals in Asia and Oceania and has a substantial interest in the campaign Francaise des Minerais de l'Uranium. The late H. Roby Liart was another director on the La Nickel's board, as well as J. Pueraria from Paneroya and Les Mines de Hauron, whose former president was the late H. Lafond, and the Banque de Paris et des Pays Bas. These are other allied French and American interest groups, another and Société des Minerais et Metals, Platino, and American Metal Climax from the combination known as Confromet, several of whom received Marshall Plan credit and post-war years. Okay, so I mean, basically what I read from all of that is that we have all these French banks grouping together and buying shit together and infiltrating together and basically this is how they get to control more. They basically become kind of a syndicate. And for this particular example, there's a bunch of French, but then they also kind of group together with the other European countries. And I think that this has a little bit to do with the parts from yesterday where we read about this Drayton guy, where you have all of these different connections. He owns this company, but he is in the board of 15 or 20 companies. His brother is of another company, and then this company owns this company, and blah, blah, blah. And then you have all these fucking names, and then it's just they're all one guy makes a decision, and all these things happen in all these different companies. And when you're doing business, just one-on-one, and you have this one contract, if you say no to this, then it's basically all of the other options that you have are non-existent because they control in one way or another everything else. So you really just don't have an option. So if you're going to do business, you're going to do business with us, whoever we say you're going to do business with. So that's kind of what this is drawing up to be. I think that's what I understand. Again, when I do my notes, I read it over again, just make sure that I really understand, and then you can kind of depend more on the notes. Everything I'm saying, is true and correct because I've read it already. But sometimes when I'm reading some of these things, I'm not 100% sure of what the meaning is of the specific sentence, or because he goes into so many goddamn details. And I know he's trying to make a point. He's trying to be like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm trying to convince you. And the thing is that I already believe you because it's 60 years later that all this shit already happened and it's gotten worse. Of course, I didn't even know how worse it did, but it did. It got worse. Oh, sorry. I've been ignoring your thingies because I don't have it in front of me. So, let's see. Let's watch something and hopefully not get angry and play a call to arms video. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that I was going to go from like that to just somebody just even more angry. The Canada Business Corporation Act states at least 25% of the directors of the corporation must be resident Canadians. African nations need this, but make it 75%, and instead of residential status, have it be full citizenship. For sure. I think that they need to make some rules to make it so that people don't own their shit. But it is really bad because at this point it's not even so much about the rules to let people in. Because at this point, I mean, from the numbers that we saw that I pulled, 65%. That's how much is owned by foreign investment. 65% of the banks in Africa are owned by outsiders. You have to make a rule now to kick the motherfuckers out because the problem is already too large. You know, you have to encourage the locals to invest, and you need to encourage the those that have ownership of the banks to sell or whatever. Like we need to have some reversal of the thing. But yes, 100% citizen. And I would say to even have like a time period of how long they would have been living there. I mean, I'm not sure what the citizenship rules are. Like, how long does it take to become citizen? For example, here in Norway, you have to live here for 7 years before you can become citizen. So maybe something like that. Like you have to be there for a certain amount of time so that you actually become a citizen. If you're going to become a citizen, you do it after spending time there. Yeah, maybe some other rules too, because I bet like some of these motherfuckers will actually buy a bunch of land and then just create their own plantation, fucking mansion, mini, country in the countries and be there for 7 years, become citizens just so that they can continue to become rich. You have to cut them off. All right. We'll watch one more video and then we are out. Let's see if we have something good to kind of send us out. Something nice. Let's see. I don't have nice things, I'll be honest. Let's see what this is. No. Is that what we just watched? That doesn't look nice. This doesn't seem nice. We already saw that and that. Let's take that. 7 countries in 5 years. They wrote their whole plan down. Ugh, this is going to piss us off. All right, you know what? Let's just end with a nice piss off.
This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries.
Ooh. Sorry.
Describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
That was an interview with retired Army General Wesley Clark about a memo from the Project for a New American Century, a neoconservative think tank that was formed in 1997, who you can thank for the Iraq War, and a lot of other things. Its founders, William Crystal and Robert Kagan, had a simple question. Does the United States have the resolve to shape a new century favorable to American principles and interests? Their key document was called Rebuilding America's Defenses and was released in 2000. And it called for the U.S. to achieve total global military domination, not just in one region, but everywhere, land, sea, air, space, and cyberspace. The people who signed on to the PNAC went on to run the country. In George Bush Jr.'s presidency, Donald Rumsfeld became the Secretary of Defense, Paul Wolfowitz became Deputy Secretary of Defense, and John Bolton became Undersecretary of State, all people with huge influence over foreign policy and all architects of the Iraq War, a war that they had been pushing for since 1998, 3 years before 9/11 actually gave them an excuse to do it. And it was a war.
This doesn't make me that upset because it's talking about current history, and because we already know that shit has been terrible, and these people, doesn't really matter who they are, have been terrible for such a long time, that he is putting so much emphasis on these bad guys, and I'm just like, they've all been bad guys, and they've been bad guys before these guys. So this doesn't make me extra angry. I'm kind of like still coasting on the anger that I already had. So I'm kind of chill.
War that killed about 1 million Iraqis and cost nearly $3 trillion. And while the PNAC was officially dissolved in 2006, the project never actually ended, and nearly all of their policies are taking shape today, like the military budget, which is a staggering one.
Wait, what do you mean? If you preload videos, you probably need to refresh the whole browser before stream? I preload videos, but I don't preload videos. What does that mean? Oh, you're talking about these Instagram stuff. Okay, yeah.
$1 trillion, with Trump calling for even more. There are Space Force bases that have been established already, and the Department of War is partnering with Palantir and other AI companies to empower their operations. And the goal hasn't really changed. Keep America on top by any means necessary.
Yeah, you know what? This was a good choice, because this really didn't do anything for me. I mean, like, I'm kind of like chill. I'm still coming down from my anger from earlier. So I'm kind of still coasting, and this kind of just kept me like, on the same level. so we're good. All right, then. Our time is up for today. Thank you so much for being a part of this stream. Again, I'll have the notes that I used, that I read earlier. I'll put those in right after the stream, and then see you tomorrow. All right.